Now will we see the magic?
All right, where's Murray? Okay, who is it?
This is Jesus, kid.
Know then that it is the year 10,191.
Yes, we are bored. We're all bored now.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Hello, and welcome to Mary vs. the Movies with your host, Mary Jones.
Dennis Link.
And this week, episode 96, we are watching what I am surprised to say is our first Robin Williams film, The World According to Garp.
When I first met you, it seemed like you hated Robin Williams.
I have what I'll call a love-hate relationship with Robin Williams. When I was young, I loved Robin Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I did. I, of course, watched all of Mork and Mindy.
Yeah, which is great.
Yes, multiple times. Yeah, I suppose it is sort of geared towards, I shouldn't say it's geared, like as much as any sitcom from the 70s into the early 80s is geared towards children. I almost feel like every sitcom was geared to roping in children until Cheers. I feel like that was the final breaking point where it's just like, we're going to make something actually written for adults. And go back and watch Cheers because, yes, it could be goofy, but it is definitely not geared to kids.
What about All in the Family?
That's a very good exception. Yes, you're right. Okay, fine, I'm wrong.
Sorry.
But there was a lot of stuff, especially if it came from Gary Marshall specifically, that was, let's also rope in the kids. There's something that's very weirdly kid-friendly about it, and Robin Williams fit right into that. So I watched all of Mork and Mindy. But
I watched a lot of Three's Company. I don't know if it was geared towards me, but...
boy. Yeah, how to unpack Three's Company. No, but then again, its inspiration is French.
Yeah.
So the French and their feelings about children and sexuality, we won't get into that. That's a whole thing. Anyway, yeah, so Mork and Mindy loved it, like was obsessed with that show for whatever reason. I don't know. God, I hate to say it. I was really into the movie Hook. I hate admitting to it now.
I feel like I saw it once.
Yeah, well, you
remember.
don't need to see it ever again. But I also saw things like, when I was probably 9, my mother rented Good Morning Vietnam, and I got very into that for some reason. The Fisher King, which we will cover on our other podcast, Hollywood Avalon. By the way, you can sign up for that on Patreon. That's right. I just put that in there.
No. Segue.
Yeah. Ugh, gross. When my family finally got cable in like 89 into 90, and there was a comedy channel, I remember there was a kind of an early comedy special that Robin Williams did that I watched a lot. And so I was very into like Robin Williams for some, and of course this is also around the same time, like a year or two later, he would be the genie in Aladdin.
Yeah,
that was a very big deal. He was a star when I was young and aware enough of pop culture.
I feel like he had like a slow, like Jack Black experience.
Oh yeah.
Like Jack Black, he was huge, and then zip.
Yeah.
Like everyone got sick of him all at once.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, the thing with Robin Williams is when he's good, he's very, very good, and when he's bad, he's awful.
Yeah.
And he ended up doing certain films like Jack and Bicentennial Man, that Patch Adams. They're maudlin to the point where I feel sick just thinking about them.
And plus, Mrs. Doubtfire
Yeah.
it hasn't aged
But here's
well.
the thing. I loved Mrs. Doubtfire when I was a kid. I thought it was great. Now you look back and you go, oh my God, no, this is horrible. What an abusive creep. I mean, abusive is maybe too far, but like, no, you don't do this. This is a horrible thing to do. Boy, I wonder if that was originally a French film. Because it feels like it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so eventually my tastes shifted, or I just went with the tide of culture and I went, ugh, Robin Williams, no. But then he started making like weirder stuff. 1 Hour Photo, Death to Smoochie. You know, he's still doing like terrible crap too. But, you know, he was doing more interesting stuff.
Was it Insomnia?
Yes, Insomnia.
You haven't seen that, right?
No, I haven't.
That's good.
I want to. The thing is, Robin Williams, yeah, he was a comedian. He went to Juilliard. I mean, he was an actor. You know, there's a number of his films that we're going to cover at some point, and this is the first one. But the other, you know, there's Moscow on the Hudson, Popeye. I mean, Popeye, that's a weird thing to do, and yet, I mean, I kind of get it. So yeah, I kind of, when you met me and I was in my early to mid 20s, I was like, ugh, Robin Williams, what a hack. And now, of course, I'm older, and I mean, granted, he has since committed suicide. It was very, very sad. I mean, you know, he's going through all sorts of like physical issues and like mental deterioration and stuff, and it's very sad. But you know, I don't know if there's been a reappraisal, but I think we're a bit more nuanced on his legacy. And you know, yeah, some of his films are amazing and performances are great, and some of them are I don't really have any desire to ever see again. Like, I've seen Jack. Don't watch Jack. It's a terrible movie.
I just think that...
And that was Francis Ford Coppola, by the way. I mean, come on, man. That's like maybe the last movie he made until he makes
Megalopolis?
Megalopolis or whatever the heck he's making. Like, I can't wait to see it. But, you know, like Coppola, my God. Oh, Awakenings. There was another movie that I was very into for some reason as a 12-year-old, which, first of all...
Oh, that's you.
Yeah, I know. But that's a weird thing to be into when you're a kid. You know where I saw
Awakenings and Jack Benny.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, man, look, have you listened to any Jack Benny?
No, I've listened to Jack Benny. He's funny.
He's great.
Yeah, he is great. Still, I don't think I would have appreciated him as a 12-year-old.
Well, first of all, I was 7 or 8 when I got into Jack Benny. And anyway, Awakenings is another movie that I was very into, and they, for whatever reason, showed us that in Girl Scouts. Like, that's the first time I saw that movie. I was at a Girl Scout retreat. When we say retreat, when it's Girl Scouts, basically it was just a weekend where we all went up to the Poconos and went skiing. And because it's a bunch of like 12-year-old girls, what do you do with them at night? You show them movies. So they showed us Awakenings, which when you think about it is a really weird choice. Well, like, why? Yeah, they're not going to be like in a hot tub. They're in a Girl Scout camp, but they showed us Awakenings.
But I think at that age, like when you're older, you're just like, just give them something that won't get me in trouble.
Yeah. Well, then why did they have a copy of The Stand at that camp? I don't know.
He, Eddie Murphy, and Richard Pryor all have the same arc, you know,
Ooh.
where they're brilliant, and then they have just this period of just crap.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
And that period kind of just influences how you think back on them, even though they had this, you know, they obviously were brilliant at points.
Yeah.
And a lot of times brilliant for most of their career. It's just that there's this a very obvious, you know, wart.
Yeah, it's Superman 3. Yeah,
oh
it's
boy.
you know, Norbit. It's I know, went right to Norbit. It's Bicentennial Man. It's like, what are we doing here? And yet, like Eddie Murphy kind of started to come back with like Dreamgirls and stuff like that. You know, Richard Pryor, he couldn't because MS and stuff, and Robin Williams had kind of an odd arc in the end.
Yeah.
Where some of his movies were just terrible, but some of the stuff, the more under the radar stuff, is really interesting and good. Now as far as this movie goes, that's the thing. Like, you go into the early 80s with Robin Williams. We haven't covered him yet, which is a little weird because he was like very present in film. And some of it, I mean, The World According to Garp. Now, this is based on a John Irving novel that I've never read any John Irving. I'm familiar with him. He wrote Cider House Rules. He wrote, The Ice Storm.
Did he write Hotel New Hampshire? Or is that someone else?
Yeah, I think he may have written.
Okay, I knew I read something of his. I think that was it.
Yeah, he may have. You might want to look that one up. But, you know, he is a novelist who, it's sort of that kind of literary enough. You know, it's anything that was written after, say, 1970 is all kind of like, is it literary yet? We don't know. Will it get taught in a college? Maybe, but only if you take like contemporary American novels or something, which I did when I was in college. You know, we had to read like Dom DeLillo and stuff like that. So I don't know much about this film except two things. One, the poster for it features an airplane that has crashed into a house and Robin Williams standing in front of it. So I assume that happens. That's number one. Number two, John Lithgow plays a trans woman, which is interesting because this is very early 80s. And trans people have always been around. So that's not strange.
This is Trans Visibility Day.
Yeah, that's true. We're actually recording that on Trans Visibility Day. Yes, in 2023, I would hope that they would actually cast a trans woman to play this role. But in 1980, whatever, as long as
let's hope he's not the villain.
Yeah.
as trans people tended to be.
Oh, are you thinking of Dress to Kill?
And plenty of other things.
I know. Yeah. As far as I know, and from what little I've picked up from the culture, because part of the idea of our show is I'm saying, look, I've never seen this film, but here's my impression. As far as I know, Lithgow's character is actually one of the better people in this movie, so that's progressive.
So it's a little bit like Angel.
Yeah, Angel rocked.
Yeah, man.
So hopefully this is the same sort of thing where the trans woman is actually like one of the best people in the film.
I get the feeling. So I haven't seen it either.
Yeah,
but I get the feeling it's kind of like a manic pixie dream movie.
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean that's
like kind of wacky, like a NPR wacky to be wacky.
NPR wacky.
Yeah,
that's a thing. That is totally a thing. Yes. Okay, I totally understand what you mean by that. Like I like. Oh my gosh, it's like trying to translate into another language, and I don't know if I can, but I totally understand what you mean by that. NPR wacky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh, like this is something that would be on This American Life.
Like a little bit less than what's that Amistad Maupin's Tales of the City.
Oh yes.
Like a little bit like less than that. But
I don't have a good sense of John Irving as a writer, so I don't know. I honestly don't know what we're in for.
Love interest for Robin Williams.
As far as I know, the character might be married. So yeah, there probably is something.
Main character dies.
I don't think he dies in this.
Think it'll be a happy ending.
Ooh, yeah. Not quite happy, but not quite a sad ending. I don't think it's a tragedy.
Do you think it changed a lot from the book?
I have no idea, as I've never read the book.
Okay. I'm just going to guess one important thing was changed from the book. I don't know what it was, but I'm just guessing.
We'll look it up after we watch the film.
Actually, I'm just throwing out a thing there just to see if I actually get it right by accident. This isn't actually. This is like how I choose like March Madness things. Yeah, that'd be neat if that happened.
Yeah. Shall we go and watch the film?
Yeah. Was that good?
I don't know. It's not a poorly made film, and there are some great performances in it. Really, Glenn Close and John Lithgow in this were fantastic, and they were both up for Academy Awards, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
George Roy Hill, the director, he made The Sting, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, which is one of my favorite movies. He made Slapshot. You know, when he's working with Paul Newman, he's great.
Yeah.
I don't think that Robin Williams is bad in this film either. I really don't. I hate Garp. I hate this man. This is Okay Boomer the movie.
We spent all like the pre-show talking about, man, Robin Williams is great. We love Robin Williams.
Well, I said there are times he's great.
Yeah.
And there are times where he's not. And this
and it's not his fault. It's John Irving.
It is. I think it is John Irving. I've never read any of his books. I don't know what his deal is other than, hi, I'm from the middle of the 20th century and feminism's great. I'm totally a feminist. You girls are going too far. I mean, that's kind of what this feels
They're
like.
cutting out their tongues. They're tonguing out their tongues.
What? Come on. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this film. I really don't. There are things about it that I think are really well done. The whole thing with Roberta, played by Lithgow, that's a great character. She is always treated with respect in this film, actually. I think it's a great performance and it's a great character.
Yeah.
Glenn Close, playing the mother, Jenny, is fascinating. She's not necessarily a good person because of how she does conceive Garp, but she's an interesting character and she feels like an interesting character. Like there's something about it that is, this is not a film without merit, but man, I don't know.
Like she is built up as like the smothering mother who's destroying Garp's life. Like in the beginning, oh, he can't be alone. You know, she has to be wherever he is. Like he wants to go to New York. She's like, okay, we're going to New York. I don't know if it's the book or if it's Glenn Close that makes her believable and sympathetic.
It's tricky because she is and she isn't sympathetic, but I do think she's an interesting character.
Yeah.
Glenn Close is fantastic in this. I think she wasn't really that much older than Robin Williams.
Was she 12 years older than him, or
I don't know that she was, like, I don't know how old she was in this, but I think she was only in her 30s, wasn't she?
Oh, maybe she was. Yeah.
I don't think she was that old. But I there's just something off-putting about so much of this film. At the same time, I don't know, I don't necessarily think if somebody likes this movie they're wrong,
like there's
except that maybe that they are. It depends on what you like about it, honestly. I mean, that's the thing, like it's one of these things.
The thing is, it kind of sticks with you.
Yeah,
like it's not something.
Yeah, so does syphilis.
Yeah. But there's so many good scenes,
yeah,
that just kind of stick with you that you're like, well, that worked, you know.
But there's something at its core that I don't like.
Yeah,
part of the thing is, in watching this, I just was reminded of how actually weird the 20th century was. When you look at the arc of human history, the amount of abundance that existed from the middle of the 20th century until, you know, more or less the end of it, it makes you feel a little sick and angry. Because watching this, I just kept thinking about the main character, Garp. He is a guy who, you know, on the one hand, yeah, he grows up without a dad. Deliberately so, which is interesting, and you know, could get into like unpacking all of that, and I think we should try. But you know, because of when this guy is coming up, it doesn't seem that hard to get a book contract. If you're the right sort of, like, yes, you have to have talent, absolutely. There's no question, but it almost feels like in the middle of the 20th century, you could just walk into a publishing company and get your book out there. It really does feel that way. If you went to the right schools, you know, it doesn't, you know, and Irving went to Harvard. I mean, come on, man. If you walked into a publishing company and you wrote a book about, yeah, I feel so stultified living in the suburbs or whatever, and I don't know, man, is this marriage thing worth doing? Let's write a whole book on that. Man, people would just eat you up. You could make so much money writing this stuff, and that because that's all like the middle of the 20th century. All that literature was about. You know, we're talking, you know, John Cheever and Updike and Richard Yates, and Irving is like he's an edgier version of that. He's slightly younger than those guys because, you know, like Updike was born in like the 30s, and you know Cheever was even older, but they're all coming and writing in the middle of the 20th century about, you know, their own trying to grapple with feminism and the pill and all of this stuff, while at the same time living in such complete abundance where, yeah, you can just get a job like teaching writing and be published, and you live this fabulously wealthy life in the suburbs and have these huge houses based on just for writing and teaching. Do you know any college professors who can do that now? I mean, look, it was like barely you could do it like 30 years ago, and nowadays, oh my God, no. I mean, look, I'm just saying, what a different world the middle of the 20th and end of the 20th century was. And it's very weird watching this and just being reminded of that. You know, like the houses that these people live in, and like yeah, I don't know. I'm just sitting there flabbergasted.
I just want to say, if a plane crashes into a house I'm looking at, I haven't put any money on the house yet, I'm not buying that house.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good. That's probably sound, which the foundations no longer are.
Yeah.
You know, it's basically the life and death of a guy who is much luckier than he deserves to be, but so we have to give him a bunch of tragedies.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how it feels.
And the tragedies feel very bookish.
Yes.
Like it just, like, there's a lot of things that happen in here. It just feels like this isn't real life. This is just writerly talk.
Yeah, I mean, the central, you know, conflict in, well, there are several conflicts in this film, but kind of the climax of this film And it is like a climax insofar as, and then you have like the denouement and all that stuff. Like, the movie builds to his wife has an affair with a grad student. His wife is a teacher at the college, and he's a house husband.
Yeah.
Like, he wrote some books, although they were never as popular as his mother. So there's all this seething resentment towards his mother in this film. But the whole time, you're supposed to have the sense that nobody loves his mother, and so like, he's really proud of her. But like, the whole time you just get this sense of like, yeah, but why is she so much more popular and a bestseller and this feminist icon, and I'm not. This is a guy who's actually secretly, maybe not so secretly, I don't know, but he's just seething at all the women in his life.
Right.
So his wife ends up having an affair. Now, the movie kind of tells you that she ends up having this affair in part because he definitely was screwing the babysitter.
Right.
Although the film only kind of hints at this. It doesn't show you that happening. We go way more into detail about her affair with this grad student that she is not happy about. And you can get into the ethics of her with the grad student because like that is a problem. But because they're having this affair and he gets very angry one night and goes out with the kids, they end up there is a car accident where the one kid dies. And the other kid is blinded in one eye. And because the wife was going down on the grad student at the time, she ends up biting off his penis. I mean, this is where it gets very writerly. It's absurd.
See, that reminded me of that thing with Stephen King where like that van driver hit him outside of his house. And
yeah, but that actually happened.
I know, but I mean, like, and then he's like, well, I'm going to get you back in the next book.
Well, yeah, true,
and it just felt like Michael Milton is a stand-in for someone he's mad at or something.
Oh, somebody that Irving is mad at? Yeah, I wouldn't even be surprised because a couple years after the film, he does divorce his wife. And then since got married and, I think they're still together, whatever, that's fine. But the film kind of, if you're paying attention, the affair happens because she's angry that he went and had an affair with this teenager. You brought this on yourself, buddy.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I don't know if the film, certainly he doesn't feel that way about it. It's interesting.
And they don't talk about it. They just say they're sorry or something.
Well, what's interesting is, it's not like the story isn't interesting in that, like, I'm getting all worked up and, in talking about the themes, but let's explain where this story starts.
Yeah.
All right. First of all, it starts with using arguably the worst Beatles song, When I'm 64. Yeah. I mean, this is Paul McCartney doing his, I'm doing music hall music.
Yeah.
Which I'm sorry, Ray Davies was much better at pulling that off.
Yeah.
I love the Beatles, but not to take away from Paul McCartney. But yeah, this has never been a good song. And we have like just this baby kind of floating in the sky type. And the idea is like the baby is kind of being tossed in the air. But I do find it interesting that we have a naked male baby.
Yeah.
So you get full on baby penis, which I think would be more controversial now. And like I'm just saying, we're much more puritanical now, and I think people would be more offended by the opening of this film than it ever should. Like, there's nothing offensive about it. It's you're starting with like the film is an entire man's life. I don't think there's anything wrong with starting with a naked baby, but I was thinking about how today I think people would make a bigger deal of this and be scandalized, and they would talk about how it sexualizes the baby. I'm like, well, no, he's just naked. It's not a big deal. But I don't think people watching this film today could handle the sexuality, what this film says about sexuality, to be honest.
You know what? The way I saw it as like Garp is someone that doesn't have any secrets, like or like he can't keep a secret or something. Like he's kind of exposed the whole movie.
Wow, that's a really good reading. One that I didn't think about.
I don't know. I saw it as like, here's this guy who, he thinks he has desires, or like he thinks he's in control of his own life, and he's just being tossed in the air by this mother.
Well, which is, again, goes back to the whole, how much does he resent his mother? His mother is a nurse in World War II who, I think the idea is that she's probably asexual. Like, she just has no interest in sex itself, but she wants to have a baby. Yeah. She wants, a child to raise. So she rapes a soldier who has a persistent erection and can't consent. Now, thankfully, people in the film do kind of say, hey, man.
They say it's rape,
they
which
call it
actually
rape.
surprised me.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I would think that in, like in the 80s, someone would just, this would be a plot in like Porky's or something.
Exactly.
And when this guy just says, "You raped that man,"
Yeah.
it's like, wow, someone actually said it.
Yeah, it's interesting that the film does take a track that, as you say, I was not expecting at all.
Yeah.
No, I really thought that the film, now to some extent, I don't know, like I wonder if like Irving thinks it's funny. That this is how the character's conceived, but because here's the thing, I don't know that people took rape all that seriously in the 80s. In fact, I think we know they didn't.
Right. Certainly not in the 70s.
Yeah. So they use the term rape, and it is absolutely rape, but you do wonder if at the time people just thought, well, isn't that quirky?
Plus, it's now quirky is a word
Yeah.
that I feel like this whole movie is striving for.
Yeah.
It's like a watered down version of what's that Bob Dylan song? Oh, the house with the hot dog, dirty hot dog.
What is
that?
On the Road Again, on Bringing It All Back Home. Yeah, that's it. Your grandpa's cane turns into a sword. Your grandma prays to pictures that are pasted on a board.
I feel like that this is some kind of boomer fantasy, to live in a house like that. Yeah, we're so done with our parents, ideals, and
we're so bohemian.
Yeah, they're saying that while living in some huge house in the Northeast or something.
Well, they live in a mansion on the coast of New Hampshire.
Yeah.
The film starts with his mother kind of bringing the baby to see her parents, who are played very briefly, but I was happy to see them by Hume Cronin and Jessica Tandy.
Yeah.
So, welcome back to the show from all the way back in Honky Tonk Freeway.
Yeah.
And, they're in it for all of 30 seconds, but they're great. And, I kind of wish there was more of them, but I was happy to see them at all. And, she basically ends up giving her mother a heart attack and killing her. And then I guess her father then dies too and ends up leaving her the house eventually in the film. And they're like appalled that she wants to have this baby without having a husband or him having a father or anything. And the film kind of just starts off with, she's just going to raise the baby at the prep school where she is the school nurse. I guess she works at a boarding school.
Yeah.
Is the idea. And so he gets to go to this boarding school for free or whatever as the son. And, his entire formative experience is, I'm surrounded by all these other boys, but I only have my mother. I don't have a father. I don't think the story ever has this idea that that's a bad way to grow up. I mean, certainly this is kind of how Irving did grow up, I think.
Yeah.
A lot of this book is autobiographical, it sounds like, or at least inspired by, right? His own conception. I don't ever get the feeling that this is bad. Like, yeah, the way he's conceived is horrifying. I don't think she's a bad mother otherwise, because she certainly loves him and tries to encourage him, and like, I don't know, you're getting into like, is she a good mother or a bad mother, and life is rarely as black and white as that. And I do appreciate that. I don't think the film wants us to make a decision.
Right.
I don't think the film wants us to think she is a good mother or a bad mother. She simply is his mother. And there are more monstrous people out there in film. Obviously, there are worse mothers. I don't. She's an interesting mother, but you never get the sense that she doesn't love him. He gets to be old enough to leave school and go off to New York to be a writer. So,
but she goes with him.
And exactly. Yeah. She decides, well, I'm tired of being a nurse, and I think I'll go with you. And she ends up writing her own memoir about essentially conceiving him and her views on like sexuality and feminism, and ends up becoming this whole icon. And she's like world famous and translated into all these other languages and whatnot. And meanwhile, he can get published and he, gets good reviews, but he's so mad, this character, that he's not as famous as his mother. And I don't know, man, there is just this pulsing anger at women throughout this whole thing, while meanwhile you get the sense of, but no, it's okay, I'm definitely a feminist, I'm totally a feminist, look, I'm surrounded by women all the time and I love women. And his mother ends up opening the big house in New Hampshire as a home for women who have been abused and whatnot, and which is an amazing thing to do, and talk about turning your life into service. And meanwhile, he has this childhood friend that he ends up getting married to, and she is herself an interesting character. What is her name in this?
Helen Holm.
Helen Holm.
Yeah.
Helen is, again, much more of a well-rounded character than I was kind of expecting. She is, she's not really a writer; she's a reader, she says, and so she teaches at the college. And she is really the breadwinner in the family because his books don't necessarily sell, even though they're well regarded. So she brings in all the money as a professor. And again, as I said, wow, they have an awfully nice house. You used to be able to do that if you got tenure. And they have a couple of kids. And as we said, they kind of settle into domesticity. And he ends up obviously having an affair with the babysitter. And that's what kind of sets off, the middle portion of, why their lives fall apart for a while there. It really is his fault. And I don't know that the film kind of explains that enough.
It sounds like in the book, like they have more than one affair or something. It's
well, it is the middle of the 20th century, isn't it? I mean, that's kind of what people. I mean, also from what I remember of what little I know of Irving's writings, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense if you're conceived through a hard-on that won't go away. That is kind of going to just set the trajectory of your life. I think that's. Ugh. All right. Because his mother has a home for women who are abused. One of the women there is a trans woman played by John Lithgow. And, the last 10 years has seen a rise of trans exclusionary radical feminism, where if a trans woman tried to enter a place like that, they would throw a fit. You can't come, you're really a man, blah, blah, blah. And the film never does that, which I found interesting. If you're a woman, you're a woman, and we're not excluding you.
In fact, Garp says, like, you're the only normal one here. And then that's when he finds out, like, by the way, I used to play for the Eagles.
I do like that Roberta played for the Eagles. I don't, just little hometown pride. But his whole thing of, well, you're the only normal person here. I mean, I do like the idea. I mean, she certainly seems like the most well-adjusted person at this kind of halfway house. I mean, he's not wrong about that. And I like that they end up becoming friends for years. It's implied, they end up becoming lifelong friends.
Yeah.
If there's anything progressive in this film about sexuality, it's definitely. Sexuality and identity and things like that, it's definitely all in Roberta. I think because she's allowed to be a person. She talks about going on a cruise, she goes on dates, it can be tough. She's funny. Like, there's just something normal about her, It's which is so refreshing. Like, so much of the depiction of being trans in culture these days is all bound up in like tragedy and depression and all these, because we're in like this terrible time right now, and we really are. And you get the sense of, man, maybe in the early 80s it wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't like this national crisis that they're turning it into. And I almost feel like we've lost something. That this character is in this film and she's great, and Lithgow was up for an Academy Award, and I don't know, we've definitely backslided, I think, on people who are trans or non-binary or whatever in our culture, like as because the visibility was already there. I mean, there had already been like movies about people who were trans, like Myra Breckinridge and whatnot. She was not a new concept for a character. I mean, there's always been trans people, but she, in terms of just Hollywood films, she was not a new concept. And I just feel like, I don't know, I feel like we've lost something along the way, But the other thing at this halfway house, and this is where I really get into some of my problems with this film, is Irving creates this idea of the Ellen James Society. And the story is that a girl somewhere in the South had been raped by a couple of men and her tongue cut out so that she could never talk about who did it. And so now you have all of these radical feminists who are cutting out their own tongues in solidarity with this Ellen James person. And part of the plot is Garp getting very angry with all of these women who are then at this halfway home, and they can't stand him either because he is a man. And so there's this whole tension of...
And plus Ellen James,
well, she comes around at the end of the film.
But she sends a letter
basically
Yeah.
saying, please stop doing this. Stop,
Yeah.
mutilating yourselves in solidarity with me. I don't want this. Which, to be fair, that wouldn't surprise me that somebody would be like, yeah, don't cut your tongues out because of what happened to me. My issue is, who's doing this? Nobody's doing this. What is this about? Why is Irving inventing this, radical feminist group who are cutting their own tongues out, as a protest against rape? Where is he coming up with this nonsense? This is basically a straw man. Okay. Like, yes, there are all sorts and certainly in the 70s, there were all kinds of radical feminist movements that, could be, you have things like the Scum Manifesto, the woman who shot Andy Warhol, and like these things existed, but you didn't have women who were like, as far as I know, you didn't have women who were doing things like cutting their own tongues out. Like, they weren't going to mutilate themselves like that. I don't know what he's thinking of specifically, that this is what he, I don't know if he's referencing something in particular, but there's so much anger directed towards these women in the film and from the character of Garp that it's unsettling, because it's just like, okay, Irving, who are you actually angry with here, and why exactly are you angry with them? Because you're white knighting it in a way. You're saying, like, you don't have to do this. Why are you first of all, why are you closing yourselves off from men? It's just like, well, I don't know, man. No offense, Dennis, but I kind of understand, like, and I don't, I don't cut myself off from men in my life. I mean, obviously, you're right here, but
and you still have a tongue.
And I still have a tongue, but that's just it. Exactly. Like, I don't know what exactly he's talking about here, and it just feels like he built, like, what's this kind of extreme feminist, movement I could come up with to sort of, say how terrible, like, you people are taking it too far, like, I don't know. There's just, like, imagine if you were a white guy writing a movie about, man, I don't know, these black radicals are going too far, and then, coming up with something absurd about it, like, they're cutting off their balls or something. Like, it just feels like so weird. Like, what do you, like, I don't know. The whole, like, we'll cut our tongues out in solidarity. Like, I don't know. It bothers me so much, and it just feels like he's having an argument with somebody he constructed in his own head.
And it's a huge part of the film. It's pretty much the whole second half of the film is his kind of fight with these women. He writes a book about it. And and eventually Ellen James herself appears towards the end of the... So, okay, we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah. And his mother, she is... his mother is very popular, and she has all these women at her house, and she ends up going and, like, speaking for a woman who is going to be elected to Congress, and his mother ends up getting assassinated.
And this is not the first attempt. We've seen another guy.
Yes, we've seen more than one attempt on her life. So this is, it's not like the film just comes out of nowhere. Although what I did find interesting is, the book was written in the 70s, and political assassinations, I mean, this is one of those sort of psychic traumas that happened to the United States in the middle of the 20th century. Again, the middle of the 20th century was pretty weird. Yeah. And, watching this, I was thinking about Nashville, things like that. The film Nashville. And, this is obviously echoing things like, Bobby
Actually,
Kennedy.
It reminded me of the Dead Zone, too.
Yeah, Dead Zone. That's a good example. Yes. I mean, look, the assassination plots are all over mid to late 20th century American fiction films. Dead Zone is a great example of that. It was just really part of our cultural fabric for a long time, and it's one you don't see much anymore because, frankly, nobody will ever get that close to a politician again, despite all the guns we have. So she ends up getting shot and killed, and the funeral wants to exclude all men from it since it was a man who killed her. And again, it just, look, I engaged in, like, feminist politics in the late 90s, and I went to some Take Back the Night marches, and there were always debates about should there be men involved, should there not be. You can, and I think it's a debate worth having about allyship, right? So I don't know if like you ever encountered anything like Take Back the Night. Okay, so back in the 90s, the idea was, as women, we would go out and en masse into the streets and walk at night. So, and the idea was, as a large group, you can't attack us.
Right.
The debate would be, should there be men there or not? Men who want to be our allies on the one hand, you want allies, you want people who are on your side. On the other hand, it sort of defeats the purpose if men come along.
Yeah.
Because the whole idea is that we're supposed to be out there without the fear of being attacked just for being a woman. I just feel like this funeral thing is a bit of a straw man because, first of all, as her son, I kind of feel like he could still have his own funeral. Like,
that's like you can have multiple things
right
as a memorial. It's
no, this is Irving again inventing a situation to get angry.
Yeah.
Okay, and he ends up dressing in drag to go to the funeral, but the younger
with the help of Roberta. Yeah, because Roberta again is like one of the only sensible people in this film. But we haven't talked about Pooh.
Well, see, that's the thing. So before Garp got married to Helen, he had an on again, off again relationship with this other girl who was the daughter, I guess, of like one of the teachers at the prep school. Yeah. Right? She had a younger sister, Pooh, who spelled like Winnie the Pooh, who never speaks, and she wears these big Coke bottle glasses and has, dark hair and kind of a mustache, and she's just the Hollywood idea of a scary, ugly girl.
Cushy,
that's right. That's what the older sister was. So Garp has this on again, off again affair with Cushy, and Pooh has caught them having sex before and used it to try to, break him up with Helen, which, to be fair, he was cheating on Helen with. Yeah. But so Pooh has this ongoing hatred of Garp, and she gets, I guess, more and more into the whole radical feminist movement and is there at the funeral and exposes him for being there. And
I think she's an Ellen.
Yeah, because she doesn't really talk.
She never talks during the film, and then when at the end, when she tries to, she says "arp, arp."
And so she's the one who exposes him at the funeral, and so he has to escape and ends up getting saved by Ellen James herself, who showed up, I guess, to the funeral.
In the guise of Amanda Plummer.
Yeah, well...
Because why not?
Yeah. It was kind of fun seeing Amanda Plummer here.
Yeah.
So this is a pretty early role for her, I think. He ends up reconciling with his wife because, through the death and everything, there's been...
Oh, another thing that happens during the death of Walt... I guess their son.
Oh yeah, going back to the car accident.
Yeah, he can't speak.
Yeah,
his
forgot
tongue
about
gets
that.
his tongue, I guess, gets cut or something from the accident. And
yeah, he ends up biting his own tongue, although he doesn't lose it. So
yeah. And the entire time when he can't speak, he's like not talking, like he's mad at his wife, and they reconcile once he can. So
and I realize this is all meant to be like dramatic irony and whatnot, that he hates these women who cut their own tongues out, and he ends up almost losing his tongue because he causes a car accident which causes another man to lose his penis. I mean, look, Irving's not subtle.
Yeah.
Okay. But at the same time, I kind of feel like it's a lot of symbolism that doesn't add up to a whole lot.
Well, also it's kind of highlighting his hypocrisy in that he was really mad at this one guy who kept driving like a maniac through the town. There's two scenes where he's chasing this guy through the whole neighborhood and stuff. But then he has this trick that he does with his car where he turns out the lights and goes as fast as he can and then stops into the driveway, and that's what causes the accident. And
right. I mean, he causes the own accident because of his own reckless driving that he's doing, while angry at his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get that a lot of his problems are self-inflicted, and a lot of his personality is that of a hypocrite. He is a massive hypocrite. My problem is I don't know that the film wants us to like him or not like him. I think the film wants us to be on his side, though, and I have a huge problem with that.
I was looking at like reviews on IMDb, just regular people.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Someone just said, "Oh, it's scenes from a life. It's great," or something, and it like there's kind of no point to it. Is how it feels at the end.
Well, I mean, it is scenes from a life.
Yeah.
Does life have a point? I don't know that the film is nihilistic.
Right.
Okay. But let's get to the end of that life.
Yeah.
Actually, because we're kind of barreling towards that because we brought up Pooh. So he and his wife, they reconcile. She goes back to teaching. He decides to become a wrestling coach at their old school, I guess. Mm-hmm. Kind of cut to, maybe he'll start writing again, maybe not. They have another kid now. They're happy. They're living in the suburbs still. And one day while he's a wrestling coach, all of a sudden a woman dressed in a nurse's outfit, like his mother, is walking through the school, walks into the wrestling room and shoots him dead. And
Yeah.
it's revealed to be Pooh. Throughout the film, she is this sort of low-key antagonist towards him. It's not like her hatred comes out of nowhere. But I don't know, man. Again,
Plus, her saying "arp arp" because she can't speak
yeah,
echoes what his mother said is all that his father could say.
yeah.
Because he had this brain injury when he was in the hospital, and he just said his name, and then eventually he was just saying "arp arp."
He goes out of the world kind of the way he came in,
Yeah.
with somebody just saying the word "arp."
And then he gets airlifted out of there, and he's like, "Oh, I'm flying, just like my dad."
We didn't explain.
Yeah.
His father was, I guess, like a tail gunner. He's sort of into this idea that his father was this war hero and could fly a plane and everything.
There's an animated bit of him flying around with his dad.
And it's a very cute animated bit. And again, like there's a lot of little nice stylistic touches. Like there's things like the animated sequence. There's the thing where he keeps kind of playing with the blinds, and as he does that, he's seeing these kind of like memories of his own life. This is towards the end of the film. So he's being airlifted, and it's implied now he's going to die before they ever get to a hospital, but we don't see it. And that's it. That's the end of the film. It's the life and death of T.S. Garp.
Yeah.
And
Terribly sexy.
first of all, I don't know, man. Hearing Robin Williams say terribly, I'm just no, you're not. I'm sorry. That's weird.
That's what it said on the page. He had to say it.
It sure is.
If it was Christopher Reeve, who apparently was up
Now
for the
that,
role, I could buy that.
yes. What did you think of Robin Williams in this movie?
So I feel like his character is just like a pawn in this writer's game.
Yeah.
Like it just felt like he was just forced to do all these things. And it just felt like, how his character's doing this, now his character's doing this. Like Robin Williams being weird and likable we know he does that.
And the thing is, there are moments where I feel like they're letting Williams do his own thing a little bit. Like there are scenes where he's playing with his kids, right? And they're all, playing with swords, like, plastic swords and whatnot, and they're goofing around in the front lawn. And there are certain things that he's doing as an actor that I've seen him do in other roles. I'm like, that feels like Robin Williams.
We can
right
see
there.
his riffing there.
Yes.
And say, okay, that's, especially him and John Lithgow.
Yeah.
In the same scene. It's like, it's definitely working there.
And those are the moments where he's the most likable in this film.
Well, for me, my absolute favorite part of the film for him is when he just is a jerk. Like when he's yelling at his kids.
Yeah.
It was such a relief for me. It's like this whole movie is just like this odd boomer fantasy or something.
Yeah.
And terrible things happen. Everybody's a victim, blah, blah, blah. But when he just is this, like hypocritical, angry dad and just cursing at his kids and like, we're going to this movie. Now we're leaving. I'm going to go back because your mom's cheating on me and she's the worst. Like there's just something about his acting. Like he's not trying to please anyone. He's not even facing the camera. He's just angry, and it just works for me. It was like such a release after this whole film of just like kind of mannered whatever.
A whole film of we're supposed to be on this guy's side. You definitely get the feeling that we're supposed to like Garp, right? I'm serious. I get the feeling that we're supposed to at least be on his side in everything. And the moments where Robin Williams actually gets to just be angry and a jerk, and there's something actually kind of natural in his acting in those moments.
Yeah,
I agree with you. They're great, and he's really great in those moments. And those are the parts where you kind of feel like this is what the guy is actually like.
Yeah,
that he's actually probably a real pain to live with.
Yeah.
But in those moments, Williams is really good.
Mm-hmm.
And he's actually, this is only his second film by now. I think his first feature film is Popeye.
Oh, wow.
Which we will get to.
Yeah.
And I am looking forward to. I keep putting it off because, I don't know, man, it's just kind of like putting off your dessert. But
I just feel like that Hollywood, like, they're like, man, this guy is crazy talented. How do we use him? And I feel like in films for most of the 80s, they're like, we don't know.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't fit in as well as like Eddie Murphy immediately fit in.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's true. Like Murphy hit the ground running.
Yeah.
And so I think Williams is good in this, but I think the character is frequently somebody I'm rooting against. I just don't like this guy. He's as you say, it's a boomer fantasy. And like, I know Irving, like, yeah, boomer is supposed to be 46 onward, but come on, this is basically, you know, that sort of, you know, elder boomer, late silent generation, whatever. Like my mother's like the same age, kind of. You know, they're all like now in their mid to late 70s or hitting 80 now. But it's the people who, you know,
this is post GI Bill living in the mall.
Oh, this is all the people who got to live off the spoils of the 20th century and then not pass it down to anyone because they all started voting for Reagan.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about this movie because there are things about it to like and there's great performances, but man, this central dude, and it's it's not like I didn't watch the end of the film and like when Pooh shoots him, it's not like I'm like, yeah, he deserved it. I don't feel that.
Yeah.
I don't feel that at all. Not watching this, but I don't like him. He just doesn't. He's not a great guy.
I don't like that Pooh is just an obstacle.
Oh no, she's
like,
not.
There's
a character.
nothing to this character. It's just and I just feel like this is such a writerly.
She represents.
creation.
She represents bad feminism.
Yeah.
She represents the unfun feminist, as opposed to the fun feminist who will sleep with you.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, I don't want to hang out with, you know, puritanical people either. Like, you know, if you've ever been on my Twitter feed, I complain constantly about these people who took all the sex out of movies. Chill out, guys.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's something about this as you know, it's one thing to be me complaining on Twitter. It's another thing to be a writer who is making lots of money and getting his books turned into films, to be complaining about the unfun, ugly feminist who cuts out her own tongue and, you know, rats on you for sleeping around.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. I feel like Irving wants to have it both ways. You know, he wants to be super progressive and have a trans woman and have this like feminist mother and have, you know, honestly, Helen's a pretty well-rounded character to me. She, you know, she's a more interesting, and I think the film makes her an interesting character. Yeah. I'm curious as to how she comes across in the book. But I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about this movie.
All I know is that this film ended and we're both like, was that good?
Yeah.
Was that good? And, you know, like now we've had a whole day to digest it and read about it and think about it, and we are still in the same spot.
Yeah.
We have no idea. Like it's not bad.
It's not a bad film. It's not a poorly
there's so
made
many
film.
There's so many things that work. Almost everything has like foreshadowing. Like there's always some kind of like, and I always love that in a film where it's like, here's a hint of what's about to happen. That happens throughout the film all the time, and I like that kind of thing in films, and this does it well. But yeah, there's just some things that just felt so contrived that it was annoying and just felt like some kind of personal vendetta against something.
So that was The World According to Garp, starring Robin Williams, Mary Beth Hurt, Glenn Close, John Lithgow.
Fiona Apple's dad.
Who's Fiona Apple's dad?
He's Maggart.
He's
the wrestling coach.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's Fiona Apple, Nepo baby.
Yeah.
Everybody's a Nepo baby now. Anyway.
Yeah. Luckily, the apple fell far from that tree.
Oh God.
Sorry.
You know, Garp might not be the only guy who gets shot today. All right. Directed by George.
I just thought of that.
Yeah. Oh man, that's terrible.
I know.
Directed by George Roy Hill and written by John Irving with a screenplay from Steve Tysick. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. You can follow us on social media. We are Mary vs. Movies on Twitter. I can't believe Twitter's still going. We'll see. You know, when this episode comes out. We are Mary vs. Movies on Instagram. Mary vs. Movies at mas.to on Mastodon, and Mary versus the Movies on Tumblr. And yeah, website maybe someday. We'll Yeah, sorry. Look, we have a lot going on right now. It's got a lot of family stuff happening. So, hopefully we won't have too many pauses in recording. But yeah, things are kind of crazy right now in the spring of 2023. So anyway, let's see. You can get us on Apple Podcasts where you can rate and review the show. And please do that because the more people who rate and review us, the higher, our visibility is. And the same thing with Spotify. You can rate and review us on there. We are also on Stitcher. We are on Google Play. We are on Overcast. If you go to the Libsyn webpage, you can get our RSS feed and plug it into whatever your podcatcher of choice is. Next episode, we are going to watch To Live and Die in L.A., which we were thankfully given a DVD of by listener of the show and Patreon subscriber, John. And, speaking of the Patreon, thank you, John. Speaking of the Patreon, by the way, we have one where you can help support the show for just $3 a month. And in return, you will get not only buttons and stickers if you send us your address. You will get access to our other podcast, Hollywood Avalon, where we talk about our theory and themes in film. We have 2 episodes out right now. Once a month, we will be releasing them. We have Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and we have First Night, and coming middle of April will be Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. And please sign up for the Patreon where you'll have access to our other podcast. I already said what next week is going to be, and so sorry about that. Next week is going to be To Live and Die in LA, which I don't know if that is streaming or not, but we were able to get a DVD of it. So, if you don't know where to find a copy of that, I'm sure there are.
Come on to our house.
Yeah, come on over, watch it with us. Until next time.
I'll stay up and think weird thoughts for a while.